Showtime!
Welcome everyone to the Rosie and Bill Show. Our guests this week are incredibly talented on an individual level, and together they form one of the fastest rising and most flat out fun duos in the music business today. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show, Kate Hasting and Josh Beale, otherwise known as Hasting and Co. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, this is so much fun. I mean, before we even turned the camera on, we were having a great conversation. So it's like, we couldn't wait to get started. So that in mind, first of all, watched a lot of your videos, love your music. You have great harmonies and just a seamless blend together. I love that you both sing lead and then you have these beautiful harmonies. So it's, everyone has to check you out. But let's get back we'll go back a little bit. When did you guys know that you were going to be musicians and singers? We'll start with you, Kate.
Oh, I mean, I think I didn't know that it was ever going to be formal. I did theater, every type of music class you can do growing up. And the other thing that was really important to me, and I always had this like mental battle, was agriculture. My dad was a farmer. And then music was really big at my school because there was really nothing else to do. I mean, I lived in the middle of a cornfield, and I was in I sang harmony in a ton of bands. I played acoustic in punk bands that I wasn't allowed to play in, but it was just always all around me. And so I started taking formal piano lessons when I was maybe 10. And then show choir, any type of, it's very obvious that I come from a theater background, as a bassist once told me. I said something about like, well, yeah, I spent 10 years in theater. And he was like, yeah, we all know. So a lot of mine was just theater and picking up instruments along the way. And I was almost always a harmony, not a lead. And then once I shook the harmony part, I never wanted to sing it again. And so it's funny because here we are. Josh's story is way cooler, actually.
Okay, Josh, your turn.
My parents were very firm on wanting both my little sister and I to have music in our lives from the get-go. And so I was put into music classes at 18 months old. And excuse me.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Started playing violin when I was 5. Did that for 3 or 4 years, and then picked up the guitar when I was 9, and kind of never looked back. Started singing in choir when I was 12, and so I just like. Not to make it sound like I'm complaining, but I never really had a choice. Like music was always going to be part of my life, and it came very naturally to me. I picked it up really easily, and I always loved tinkering around with new instruments. I recently found some videos of my dad's old accordion of me playing. So. Really, that was about it. I went to college to study church music, and partway through that realized that wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and started getting more serious about songwriting and started making trips to Nashville.
I think we both accidentally fell into commercial music. I was raised to where, the radio was all we had, and that was like a big thing on the tractor. It sounds so funny now, it's so cliche, but like that was what we had, was FM. And my parents were very strict about, like, there was no pop, there was like a little bit of Christian, but it was really just country. And I used to you know, be very angry at them for that. But now it's so interesting because we'll get called in to write specifically for, hey, we need this to sound like radio. And I think that that now is like such a great honor to be asked. But I think you and I found it a curse when we first moved here. I mean, I had no idea, and this is a true story, who Fleetwood Mac was until I got to Nashville. Like, how sad is that?
I don't know that it's sad, but it's, again, it's you only know what you know, growing up. So that's understandable. But so now we've got some background on how you both got started individually, but now I want to fast forward a little bit to how things and how you guys came together. And is it true that Kate's powers of persuasion may have had something to do with this all happening in the beginning?
I don't like to admit it, but
I'm telling you what's that saying? I could sell a, I mean, I was a born salesman. And I saw Josh playing, he was playing a bar that's now closed that was underneath a hotel that my parents and I would always stay at. And I got in with a pretty big producer pretty early. He found me in Ohio randomly, and a guy that I knew from a neighboring high school didn't know that I wrote songs, anything like that. And he's like, this guy has to hear these songs. And so I got an easy pass to Nashville, I always call it. Like, I got in, but what happened for me really early was I was writing with a lot of signed writers, and it was considered a production publishing deal. But what happened was I kind of like started hanging out with like only 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds that had all these hit songs as, you know, a 16 and 17-year-old. And that I'm thankful for what they've given me. We're all still very close. But it sort of ostracized me from building a community of my own, because they had their own built-in thing and I was always with them. I couldn't drink anyway, so I was only allowed to go out with them. And I'll never forget sneaking down to a bar and watching him play and being like, there were all these people that were like almost my age. And I had just never really been exposed to that side of it. I went like from zero to hero. Like, I was in bigger parties right away, just places I didn't belong. I wasn't ready because I didn't know who I was. Saw him playing and I was like, I have never seen someone that looks that good, that plays that, it's the mullet, that plays guitar like that. And I mean, I had been around at that point some of the best players in town, and I had just never seen someone like, what I remember you most about you was you playing the melody over the chords. Like, you were always playing the melody of the song over like just the straight chord. And I mean, I have a hard enough time playing the chord. So I'm like, this guy is so good. And so afterwards I creeped him on Facebook and I was like, hey, here's the deal. I book a ton of shows and I make a lot of money in Ohio playing shows, which I did at the time. You're gonna probably be in my band. And then I'll no longer have to play acoustic, which was really the big goal all along. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I would play for hire, but I'm never going to be an artist. I'm just a songwriter. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see. And I think the first show we played together, you opened for me.
I didn't even open for you. I played for a girl who was opening for you.
The irony. And so like, just over time we started writing together, and it was just almost an instant, like, it was just so much easier to write with a peer. Like, I was trying to explain these things that like what truck tugs were and what things were that were going on back home. Like, I'm like unapologetically so country. And so I was like trying to explain it to him. He's like, oh, I know what that is. Or like, I know that part of 4-H, or I was involved in this and I know what I didn't have to explain anything.
You know, you brought me to the next question, which is, what is the writing process like for the both of you?
Oh, I think it goes every way.
It goes every way. I mean, Kate is, I mean, I think you would say about yourself, you're a top line writer, very much. Like, she brings a lot of ideas really easily. I love the way her brain works that way. And usually you'll have a direction for us to go. I usually,
except for the second verse, man, never can nail that second verse.
If we're sitting with a group of writers, a lot of times my role tends to be setting the mood, playing something that just comes to mind, and after one or two or three tries, we figure out something that just feels right. I tend to edit a lot, so I'm quieter in the room, but sometimes Kate will just make everybody shut up for a few minutes, and I'll kind of puzzle piece everything together.
I'm like, give it a minute. He's doing something. Doesn't look like it. It's working.
So I don't know. We have our own roles, and we found our community of people that have all kind of fit together, and we know our roles when we walk in the room. But so we have a pretty set process a lot of times. But we'll sit down. We'll have an idea. We'll spitball, throw some rhymes and some phrases back and forth at each other, and just kind of see where we go from there.
I read a lot, so I'm highly inspired by literature. Like, I'll hear something said some way and I'm like, man, I wish they would have said it this way. And then I'm like, well, I could say it that way. And so that kind of thing will come to me. But what's interesting also about Josh and I, and where we sometimes clash, is you are an editor and you're a rule follower, and I'm the consummate rule breaker. So like, I think some of the best artists have come out of the fact that, like, we were actually just talking about it with one of our really good friends, and we were talking about how Taylor Swift, like, sometimes she just had to tell the story, and it wasn't the perfect song. It was like All Too Well is going to end up being one of the most popular songs of all time, and it's like the next release of it's going to be like 7 minutes long or something. And she has so much more to say. And so it's like, I've got chills just because I'm like, that's not a perfect song. But when you listen to it, like, our friend and I were talking about, like, we didn't have a scarf that was in a drawer or whatever, but it was so honestly written. And it was so written outside of a box that, like, that's what's made it iconic. So I think it's fun that you can kind of color within the lines, but I'll be like, no. Let's just try it this way.
Let's move the lines.
Yeah, let's move the lines just a little so that it's ours and not someone else's. Because, like, 90s country's over, you know, Big and Rich already happened. Like, we have to carve our own space a little bit.
Wow, that's a great point. And I know that from what I understand, I know that the 90s country, you know, that's one of the things that really inspired you guys, you know, early on. And it was actually when I got into country in the early 90s, being from Philadelphia, because a lot of music outside of country, I didn't like the way it was going. And you talked about those stories and things, and that's what really drew me in, were the lyrics and the stories. And even though I'm from the city, I could identify with so many of those stories. And I really appreciate the stories that you guys have shared with us so far, both individually and collectively. And there's one that I'd like to talk about now, which really involves a lot of different things. And there's so many things you guys have in common, but like you said, there's also some things that you're different, but it works, it comes together. And one of the things you have in common is that you both lost your dads within a very short time. Mm-hmm. And it was a very impactful experience for both of you, but it had an impact on you personally, physically. There was your name of the duo involved. So can you share with us how all that came about and what that experience was like and the impact that it had on you individually and collectively?
Well, we both, I mean, you can, if you want to start, I mean, we both lost our dads very differently, but very similarly all at the same time. I mean, it was in 11 months of each other, it was the same year. And like, if you want to explain your dad, and then I can kind of go into.
Well, yeah. I grew up with a dad who had when I was very young, he was diagnosed with a very rare form of leukemia. I spent a lot of my childhood and growing up years going from hospital to hospital across the country, and, you know, kind of being on the road while he got chemo and experimental drugs and things like that. But we just recently got to the 2-year mark for him, but about 2 years ago, he finally succumbs to a lot of the complications from that and what that caused with. And I'm thankful. It was a weird comparison because I lost him very slowly, and thankfully I got some I got to have some closure beforehand and say the things I needed to say before. But I think the way that we each lost our dads in completely different ways were two different kinds of hell.
Yeah, I was seeing a guy, and I was back home at a family reunion, and it is so strange how I've heard people talk about these kinds of things and never believe them. But at this particular family reunion, they were talking about loss. Like someone was giving a speech about loss. It was a huge family reunion, and this guy and I were on the brinks. It was kind of weird to be there anyway. And they said, one of the things they said was like, he lost his father, the guy that I was seeing at the time, to a form of leukemia. And they said they had lost another cousin in an accident or something. And they said, you know, the one thing like we wish we would have told everyone was, do you have a plan? What is your plan if the head of your household is no longer there? And like, it was so strange. I don't even know if I told you this, because I felt my heart drop, because like I hadn't heard from my mom. And like the big thing that I remembered, the thing that I remember more clearly than anything else is Casey Musgraves had worn these white boots, and maybe they weren't even white now. I can't even remember. They were just these iconic boots she had worn on this award show. And I'd seen a picture of them, and like, I'm not a dress up girl, but I told my mom, I was like, man, if I had these boots, like, you know, I would wear a killer dress. And I remember like not hearing from her. And my mom is like, you know, they always say like, your mom can't be your best friend. And like, my mom wasn't until I was of age she was a disciplinary, and she was my parent until she was old enough to be my closest friend and my closest confidant. And when she didn't text back, I thought something's wrong. And like, I didn't know. And then they gave that speech and my heart dropped, and I just had this feeling my dad was dead. Like, I couldn't even explain it. Like, I was like, oh my God, we never laid out a plan. And I just thought, you know, you brush it off and you're like, that's fine. I walked outside, and I had no service in this building, and I had like 15 missed calls from my uncle. And I was like, that's so weird. And then I was like, should I call him back, or is it just something like, who knows, you know? So I called him back, and he was just like, you need to get to grandma's now. There's been an accident. And that was just like, he wouldn't tell me anything, because I think they wanted me to get there safely. They just said, you need to go to grandma's. And so at the time, what's really, really, really hard to talk about in this story is they had thought both of my parents had passed. And my mom had, but there was a doctor there that literally like broke her rib cage open and massaged her heart, which is like a no-no protocol basically now in most hospitals. But he happened to be a military doctor, and that is what they do. That's what they are trained to do. And she coded 3 different times. They brought her back to life, and they brought us in to say goodbye. And I just can't explain that. Like, so it's not like it happens in the movies. And my brother was on a plane, so I kept trying to FaceTime him. He knew something was wrong. And we all kept talking about how, like, it's going to be so cool. We're going to be together for the 4th of July for the first time. Like, I have never not worked at 4th of July. Like, I've never not played. So he was like, it's going to be so cool. And then it just kept glitching. And all I could hear him say is, something's wrong. Is something wrong? And I, like, could never get enough to be like, something's real. Like, you have to come back here. Like, and he landed. And I just remember, like, them calling in this scary priest. Like, this priest was like, I can't even remember, like, the priest scared me. I don't even know why. I think it was all just so like unnerving. The whole thing just wasn't supposed to be happening. And they called, they prayed over my mom and they said, she's probably not going to make it through the night. We can pull you a bed in here, whatever. And she made it through the first night, made it through the second night. Then she made it through the third night and her vitals were starting to pick back up. And I remember this doctor coming in and being like, I hated him. And he came in and he said, you know what? Even if your mom, even if she lives through this, it is not going to be the mother that you know. Your mother will never go to the grocery store again. Your mother will never know who you are again. And like, I know he was trying to like prepare us for that, it's doctors. Like I did pre-med. It's like, he was just telling us facts. But like all my anger at one point just turned to this man. And I'm thinking like, you don't know my God. So, and you don't know my mom. And my mom is fully my mom, if not more my mom, than she's ever been. And she is slowly but surely starting to walk again. There was a piece of bone laying on a nerve, and they're finding out that part of it's a nerve problem. So like, she wasn't paralyzed like they thought. There's been so many miracles out of it, but we always talk like, is it easier to lose it all at once or to like, have this watch it deteriorate? Yeah. So I don't know, because I think both of them were both of our fathers. Like we're so close that I was very close to his dad. I think we've experienced both, and there's no better way. It's just and no one should bury their, I just don't think that like in your teens or 20s you should bury your parent. That is just so weird to me. Like it just seems so weird that you would bury your parents. Like,
but her parents had that accident. My dad passed 11 months later, and
the irony.
The irony, and
if you needed a little more irony.
Literally, they waited to have a memorial for her father, and as I was walking out of the memorial for her father, I got the call from my parents saying my dad had been given a month to live.
And I knew something was wrong because you kept like grabbing at your pocket or something, and I said, "What? Who is calling you?" Like, my God, it's my dad's memorial. Get your stuff together. And
but I don't know, it made it really just too coincidental that we're in each other's lives, and feels really divine, that there's a lot more than music that brings both of us together.
As you were saying that, I was just kind of thinking the same thing, that there are no coincidences. Yeah. And that there is a higher purpose, and obviously music is a part of it, but God bless you both. And how has that translated into your music? Because I know that authenticity is very important to you both.
I mean, I can kind of speak to where it went for me. I don't know if it's different for you, but like, we were writing these songs and some were serious, some weren't, some were working, some weren't. And there literally became, for me, this absolute, and it's the best thing that's ever happened in my life, this epic moment where it was just like, I always said, okay, listen, the one thing that like I can't lose ever are my parents. Like that is my deal breaker with God. If something happens to my parents, I'm out. Like, I mean, I can remember saying this as like a little kid, having fear of that, like the anxiety around it. And then something happened. And then the next day you're like still breathing. And then the next day you're still breathing. And it just keeps going on. And 2 weeks later, we played a show with Craig Campbell, who my cousin was divine. This is divine too. My cousin was his manager at the time. So our first show back was literally with my cousin's artist. And I just saw her. I didn't know if I could play the show. I thought I could. I think I was like, my body will remember what to do once I'm there. Like, surely it will remember. And my other cousin drove me, and we got there, and Maddie was there. She wasn't supposed to be there. She's like, I don't know how you're playing this. And I said, well, don't say that. Like, you got to be like, girl, you about to kill this show. And I remember him giving some story about losing someone right before an Opry gig or something. And he was just like, you just do it. You just have to do it. And that was the final time that I said, I will never, ever, ever again sing a song that I don't want to sing. And like, I will never be on a stage and sing a song I don't. If he wants it, like we can 50-50. If you want it, like that's as much as me wanting it. We're a partner. But like, I'm never going to sing the sad songs for a while. I can't do it. I'm not made of sad anymore. Like my mom's alive. What more? Like there's a time for celebration, and it just became this moment where it was like, Brunch Drunk is it. Like, this is it for me. SPF is it. Like, this is what I need to sing for just a little while. Doesn't mean we don't have any depth. Like, we have, you know, we have outside cuts. Like, people are cutting our deeper stuff. But it was the last time for a while that I was going to sing something that felt disingenuous. Like, it just, Brunch Drunk it was personal to me. I love the way the crowd reacted. I love seeing people happy. I love bringing people joy when I can barely keep it together. That is what like reignites me to get back on stage.
I think we got more serious about having more fun on stage. And I started, maybe it brought more, maybe it took some death and some real sadness to bring some real life and joy to our career. And I think it made us focus more once the dust settled a little bit and realize what we really wanted out of this and kind of double down.
And it was like clockwork too. You know, right when you're at the end of your rope, you're like, oh my God, I don't know that we can do this. Like, I don't know where it's going to go. Priscilla Block blew up. And then, you know, everybody makes you promises. Your best friends always make, well, I'll cut your songs. I'll cut your songs. And like, she did. She cut 5 of our songs, and it changed where we were in the writing community. So we didn't have to prove anymore. Like, these guys are a one-trick pony. They can only write SPFs. They can only write Brunch Drunks. Like, you can go listen to other albums and hear songs. Like, we just felt like we had nothing that we had to prove anymore. And anyway, why would we? Like, try to tell me something that is going to be worse than that day. There is no, I keep looking at you guys instead of the camera because this is so deep, but sorry, love ya. But I feel like even like when labels don't get us, or they're like, oh my gosh, what do they think they are, the next Big and Rich? Who are these guys? Or they just, some people just hate it. But like when I always say seeing is believing. If you come to our live show and you don't have a good time, then you haven't drank enough, one, or two, like you are impossible, because like we do not have bad times at shows. Like, people get lit at our shows, and because I think that's what we're good at, is like we know grief, and the other side of grief is joy. So like that is what we know how to make at this point. That doesn't mean in a year we won't be so happy that we'll want to sing sad songs. I just know in this moment, hate us all you want, say no all you want, nothing you can do to us could be worse than what we've already lived through. So like, we're going to do it our way. And it's funny because ever since we started doing it our way, it's worked. So people can like feel genuine. And maybe in the beginning, it just wasn't as genuine as it needed to be.
As you're saying that, I just wanted to just throw in a couple things before I get to the, excuse me, the next question that I had for you guys. But being genuine and being who you are, there is definitely something to be said for that. And also reacting in the way that you did, in terms of, yes, nothing can be worse than what you had to deal with. And you talked about wanting to bring joy to people. And I think one of the first times I caught the video for Brunch Drunk, I may not have been having a great day, but I sure was after that one. You know, the line about the Pedialyte IV or whatever. Oh yeah, I like where we're going. Right. So anyway, yeah, and it's just like, even though it's a little bit different, but you know, that with Rosie and I in our talk show, there have been people sometimes that have asked us, you know, why don't you guys do any like gotcha questions or go this way or that way? No, we just want to have conversations with people. We want to get to know our guests and have our viewers get to know our guests and who they really are. And that works. Being who you are works. But
you guys have that Howard Stern effect where you just make people want to talk because you guys, you're like, no, you just look like trustworthy. I can't even explain it. And then you start with like a really small question. So then like, I don't know, it just has that effect of pulling things out. We've been in interviews where it's like so rehearsed and you're just like, you didn't even want to know anyway. So I'm not going to tell you. Like, so you.
Well, we'll say thank you to that because it really is just such an honor and a pleasure when we talk to our guests and to just really get to know them, and it does really become a conversation. And I think that's the way you get to know each other, and then the byproduct of that is that our viewers and your fans get to know you. They're in the inner circle now.
Yeah,
it's true. But I will say this, from time to time we do like to have a little fun, and that was one of the things that that I wanted to just ask, because I'm going to go back to Brunch Drunk for a second, then we're going to get to SPF, one of the best videos I've seen in a long time.
Well played, sir.
The ending a little lower, the classic.
You guys know who that is? That's which another guest you should have on. That is the infamous Big Benny from Trailer Choir from the 90s that Toby. I
had their EP when they came out.
Toby Keith like personally signed them. I mean, like they were like Toby Keith's like babies. So that's him, and he's lost like how many pounds?
I thought he looked familiar.
Yeah, 300 pounds he's lost.
Yeah. Well, so before we get to SPF, my question is, with Brunch Drunk, whose hangover was that based on? Or whose hangover?
Honestly. It was more an observation of bachelorette parties than anything.
Yeah, with Nashville having become just kind of the bachelorette capital of America, when you start seeing like a bachelorette party on every corner of Nashville, you know, make observations about how everybody's handling their weekends in town, and I think a lot of that had to do with just what we were watching happen all around us.
And that is an excellent example of how we write best, like our go-to method of writing, because I was driving around with, you know, the flavor of the week, and he said, that makes me sound terrible, but it's so true. And he said, yeah, it makes you want to go get brunch drunk, huh? And I was like, we were on the phone with him, and I was like, oh my gosh, brunch drunk. And then I was like, brunch drunk. And then he was like researching brunch terms, and we were writing with Priscilla Block and Sarah Jones, and we knew we wanted to bring it to them. They're like, we said, this sounds so bad to all our other writers, love you, but we save our hooks for them because like the four of us just have this like undeniable dynamic. And Josh had Googled every possible brunch term. He had the structure of the song laid out. And the one thing that I remember like being the absolute definition of who you and I are is at first the line was, pour a little OJ or pour a little champagne in my OJ because you like the way that it sang better. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but that's not what people that are brunch drunk want. They want a little bit of OJ in their champagne. And you were like, but it sings better. I'm like, but they're drunker the other way. And you were like, no, yeah, you're right. So like, it was the perfect example of who we are. We're gonna get brunch drunk, pour a little OJ in my champagne. Don't stop, keep them coming. We're about to turn up.
Well, let's talk about SPF U. I feel a little naughty even saying it.
It's just about sunscreen.
It's just a license.
No double entendre.
No.
What inspired that, and how much fun was that to shoot?
Well, you had the idea.
I've had that idea. It was fun. I mean, like I said, I was the cool kid with the 50-year-olds for a while when I first got here. And I've had that hook for literally 10 years. And I would bring it to these older, I love Don Rollins. He wrote It's 5 o'clock somewhere. So I was riding with him that day and I was like, this is for sure a Don Rollins song. So I bring it in and I'm like, Don, I've got our song. It's a hit. Let's go. And he's like, what's it called? And I sing in the chorus. I was like, I want to SPF U, rub that sunscreen all over your back. And he goes, I cannot write that with a 17-year-old. And I said, who could write this with me? And he goes, it's going to be a long time down the line and it's going to be one of your peers. And I thought that was so incredible that he said that, because it really was 10 years later with our peers. And Priscilla kept saying, I'm never writing the sunscreen song. I don't want to write that, because I would bring it in every time. I'm like, all right, guys, I've got the idea for today. It's called I Want to SPF You. And she's like, we're not writing the sunscreen song. And I was like, all right, you'll give in one day. And then she wrote Thick Thighs Save Lives. And I was like, girl, don't you even come at me after writing Thick Thighs Save Lives and not writing the sunscreen song. It's happening today. And so it became like the crowd. It's done something to crowds that no song we've ever had has done. Brunch Drunk was close, but this was like its own life.
Yeah, we started playing it out. I think the first time we really played it out was down in Key West, the Songwriters Festival a few years back. And it was always fun to sing the first verse, get into the chorus, and watch people who weren't paying attention watch the entire bar stop in their tracks and just turn and
like high five each
what did I just hear?
Yeah. And they're like, where can we get this song? And we're like, probably never anywhere. It was never the intention to, I mean, that song just like had its own life. There was never like direction, like we're going to cut this, we were going to use it as a crowd pleaser. The biggest thing I think was we opened for Jake Owen and his entire crowd was freaking out. I mean, they were just like, where do we get the sunscreen song? The sunscreen song, it's got to come out. And we're like, I just don't think we can put that out. And then we were thinking about it and we were like talking about all these horribly dirty songs that if it's no worse than anything else. Brad Paisley, Check You for Ticks is definitely about sex. Like, and the U was not always on there. It was just SPF, but the team decided the U. Would you skip over a song that said SPF? Yes. Would you skip over a song that said SPF U? You'd probably have to stop and look.
That is so much fun. And the video is lots of fun. And you're very mischievous there, Josh, in that video.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to shoot. I can't say I wasn't looking forward to everything I got to do in that video. And we went to CVS the morning of the first day of shooting, and I feel like we bought out half their supply of sunscreen.
And sunscreen is expensive, y'all. If you want to make a music video, may I recommend mayonnaise? It looks the same and it functions. We've now switched to mayonnaise, and you guys may see that on TikTok sooner rather than later.
As Bill said before we started recording, your future is so bright. You're going to have an SPF of 50.
Oh my gosh, please. And you know, if you want to close it out too, like our advice to everybody that we talk to is just, you know, use protection.
On that note, thanks again, guys. we
got him.
You got him.
I don't think we're cutting this part.
No.
Well, we hope everyone's enjoyed getting to know Josh and Kate as much as we have, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. And remember, use protection.
Protect. See you guys.
We both know we've been working too much, so I bought us 2 tickets down to Mexico. 5 days on a beach, a little time alone. Baby, we've got the ocean, and you got the lotion. Let's set this in motion. I wanna SPF you, rub that sunscreen all over your back. Baby, I got the best view of you laying in the sun like that. Whoa, untie that bikini top, 'cause I don't wanna miss a spot. You know what I wanna do, I wanna SPF you. Yeah, we don't have to walk around this tourist town. Let's lay here in the sand until the sun goes down. I'd hate to see you burn, 'cause you're already hot. I know you're a 10, but 8 is all I brought. Baby, slide on over and come in closer. I missed a spot on your shoulder. I wanna SPF you, rub that sunscreen all over your back. Baby, I got the best view of you laying in the sun like that. Whoa, untie that bikini top, 'cause I don't wanna miss a spot. You know what I wanna do, I wanna SPF you. I wanna SPF you. Whoa, carpet tone banana boat, from your head down to your toes. Rubbing on that sun bum, come on baby, give me some. I wanna SPF you, rub that sunscreen all over your back. Baby, I got the best view of you laying in the sun like that. Whoa, untie that bikini top, 'cause I don't wanna miss a spot. You know what I wanna do, I wanna SPF you. Whoa, I wanna SPF you. Hey, you wanna get my back too? Yeah, just a little lower.